Joining us today are Rego expert guides Alison Poston and Ross Hensel. Alison is the Chief Customer Success Officer at Rego, where she's responsible for keeping customers happy and up to speed with innovative techniques and tools that will help them drive success. And Ross has specialized in the PPM space for many years, leading deployments and providing strategic guidance and training to clients in various industries. Thank you both for joining us today. Alison, I'll hand it over to you to learn more.
All right. Thank you so much, Sandra. And thank you, Ross, for joining me. We're both very excited to talk to you guys a little bit today about Moventus and what our goal is of this webinar. So let's talk a little bit about our goal. What we want to do is really help empower you with some knowledge so that you can make an informed decision when choosing a PPM tool. So if you're looking to adapt to a new system or evaluating how effective your tool is, we want you to leave this webinar today with a good understanding of some of those essential features that you should be looking for. So this is an educational seminar, and we want this session to cover the must-have capabilities of PPM tools and how they can address project management pain points and what differentiates a good PPM tool from one that's just okay or that you might potentially outgrow. So Ross, I don't know if you want to introduce anything else before we move on.
I can introduce myself just by saying hello, but I think you kind of nailed it. I mean, we really want to empower you with what we've seen over the years that we've been working in the PPM space to say, hey, this is what you should look for when seeing or kind of when vetting different PPM solutions. They're all going to kind of have the base tool kind of standards within them, but really kind of nitpicking and pulling out those ones that would be most impactful for your organization is probably key here, and that's what we want to talk about today.
You know, that's such a great point. And one of the things that we have as a personal goal is to even share with you guys our experience. I think collectively, the two of us have, let's not give the numbers out loud, but certainly multiple decades of experience working with PPM tools and customers. So we know there's some things that really transcend the organization and work for folks and some that don't. And so we want to really point out those features that we know can make a big difference. So let's delve in a little bit to the imperative of PPM in the modern business. So as we start to get going into this session, we want to really set some context. And we are very much aware that in today's business landscape, project-driven work is here to stay, and it will only continue to grow with complexity that can scale. And it's going to scale within the context of the projects that you're working on as well as the organization. And so without a proper PPM tool or really a good solution that gets everybody on the same page, your risk is going to go exponentially higher. You're going to see potential project delays or budget overruns, or the biggest one that I know we hear everywhere is resource misalignment or misallocations on folks that are where you don't have good visibility and line of sight into the things that they're working on. So that's going to translate into significant setbacks like missed market opportunities and even really set you negatively against your competition. And so as far as the current project management tools, a lot of organizations manage projects, and I hear it still all the time, spreadsheets and email. In fact, we have a very large bank that is one of our clients. And one time I asked them, I said, what would happen if we took email and spreadsheets out of the bank? They said, we'd have to close the doors. And that really speaks to the fact that they rely still, even if they're a huge international multi or layered organization, they still rely on a lot of spreadsheets and emailing the spreadsheets back and forth to each other instead of really working off of a holistic tool. So that's going to create a lot of siloed information that's going to have lots of errors. And the reality is it's going to require a lot of individual manipulation to have people literally glue that stuff all back together and to make sense of it. And so that creates so much risk, and that creates a lot of inefficiency to hamper growth. So as far as why we think this is a big deal, well, the need for a dedicated PPM solution truly is there. And a lot of times companies look at this and go, it's too big, it's too mature for us, we're super mature. What's nice is there's always one size fits many. And I don't know of any group of people who said a tool can do too much for us and we regret it. Being able to set a product ahead of you and use that as aspiration to help you grow into it, I think is really a huge benefit of so many companies and organizations. So Ross, I don't know if you want to jump in and share some of your thoughts on this too.
Yeah. And I think one thing that you said that was kind of critical was around how the need for this isn't really going away. Actually, it's increasing. So what may be changing is, how you execute on the work. Maybe you're moving from more traditional waterfall with phases, which will always be around. Certain projects just require that type of execution in project methodology. But you may be moving towards more of a hybrid approach where you're, Scrum fall, or maybe you're moving fully agile. So the tools, these PPM applications are not necessarily going away, but how you execute on the work may be adjusting, and you should have a PPM solution that can kind of flex for either of those models or all of those models at the same time, kind of depending where you are on that journey as an organization.
That's such a great point too. And we mentioned spreadsheets, and that's not a totally inaccurate way that even some tools are used. Some people really are a nice linear manager of getting work done. And is that wrong if they're successful? The only thing wrong with it is if it lives in a silo and it lives on somebody's desktop, and being able to lose that visibility and understand how that work fits into your overall portfolio, I think is a challenge. And so I love these tools that really become agnostic in terms of technique. Use whatever works for you, but if it all updates the leadership and dashboards and everybody the exact same way, does it matter? And so I'm seeing that a lot as well. Which brings us actually to our very next slide, and we want to talk about some key features of effective PPM software. So Ross and I are going to split this up, but I just wanted to introduce some of these things that we really encourage you to keep your eyes on as you're looking for tools, because some of these can really make a difference. So first off, we're going to talk a little bit about strategic alignment and how you can link projects to your goals. This to me is such a big deal, and Ross is going to go a lot deeper into it because this is a pervasive and ever-growing space, and I think it's just great.
Might have lost Alison, so I'm gonna snag it from her. So yes, Alison mentioned strategic alignment. And so I'll cover that one in a little bit more detail, but that's something that we're really seeing kind of blossom all over the place. People want to know what projects they're working on, how they impact the business, what goals they're achieving, how they're helping the organization. So that strategic alignment is pretty key. Next one would be resource optimization, right? So this is actually looking at your resources across the enterprise, kind of looking at the skill sets, the roles that you have, seeing if you have enough headcount, seeing where you might need to flex and bring in contractors, seeing how people are over or under allocated, and making sure you're effectively using your resource pool across the organization. Financial oversight is also another huge topic. This one comes into how do we want to forecast, right? We need to provide finance updates on, how much we're going to spend on this project, where it might go over, if we need to submit a change request, all kind of core project management functionality that we really want to drive and capture within a tool, right? We've got all those numbers and kind of a single source of the truth, so we're able to effectively make those decisions on whether we should go, cancel, pause, hold, work, things like that. Risk management is also a very hot topic at a lot of organizations that I see, right? Effectively showing risks, issues that are coming up, that are popping up on these certain projects, and elevating those risks to a higher kind of level, maybe the director level, the VP level, the CEO level, to say, hey, these are what's impacting our projects. This one actually can't go forward because we don't have resources or we don't have funding. Getting it and making it visible at that leader level so that they're actually able to take that information and actionable and make it a little bit more actionable. We've also got collaboration and communication, which that's probably a very obvious option that you should have in a PPM solution, but really having those team discussions, either within the tool, right, within the PPM solution as conversations where you're just kind of tagging people back and forth, or even actually integrating some of your chat applications that you have in-house today, whether that's, Microsoft Teams or Slack or something like that, and kind of having that cohesive experience where it's not only that I have the conversation here, but it's also translated into my PPM solution.
Hey,
and
Ross,
lastly,
I want to test to make sure I'm back. It sounds like my thunderstorm took me out for a minute there. Sorry about that.
No, it's all good. I'm just on the last bullet, but I'll hit this last bullet and then you can go to chime in with anything else on here. So reporting and analytics. So this is really your data-driven insights and decision support. So having the correct reports, having the ability to flex those reports and make them to kind of tailor to your key stakeholders, having that data in real time, providing different options to kind of get at that data, not only with static, but also real-time dashboards, is all really key in kind of picking or choosing a PPM solution kind of for the long term.
Yeah, great points. So yeah, I was chatting away, but there are so many of these things that we know are really differentiators. And what I don't want everybody to feel is that these are daunting and that these are hard hurdles to jump. These are capabilities that are going to automate and help align things that you're already doing. It just makes it a lot easier when it's all in one place. So with that, are you going to jump into strategic alignment?
Yeah, let's do it. So as you saw, we've got that first bullet point where we really wanted to talk about strategic alignment and goals. And I guess, let me back up 1 minute. That previous slide where we kind of listed out all the different topics, what you'll notice on there is we didn't list out any of like the basic ones. Like your PPM solution should be able to track projects and ideas. That's almost a given at this point. If it can't do those kinds of things or have tasks or things like that, then it's just not a PPM solution. You might as well just go back to Excel or something like that. So we're not covering the very basic ones. These topics that we'll talk about are a little bit higher level, and that's what we wanted to focus on, right? Any PPM solution can kind of give you a spreadsheet or a database of projects. This is really kind of, these topics will really take it to the next level and how some of the organizations that we speak with are utilizing this effectively. So the first one that we want to talk about is kind of this business strategy integration. And so we really want to ensure that projects align with key business objectives. And so what that looks like in a PPM solution is not only that you're allowed to kind of tag your investments, your ideas, your projects, whatever else you've got going on to overall company goals and strategy, but that you're also allowed to make that visible so that Ross, down on the totem pole as a developer on a single team, is able to go into the system, see where the projects that he's working on and see how those align to the overall business strategies and goals. I see this and actually hear about this time and time again. These individual contributors that are at these organizations are not always aware of the projects that they're doing and how they impact the organization. I may be working on the coolest new product, and Alison may be working on a firewall upgrade. Both really important to the business, but allowing that visibility to see, oh, well, maybe she's impacting or upgrading this firewall, but that's actually downstream securing the business. We got hacked, 3 years ago, so it's preventing that $1.5 billion ransomware thing that we had to pay, things like that. So you may not see, all the different ways that your projects help or benefit the organization, but really kind of opening that up and allowing that to be visible in the system is really impactful and a great thing for your kind of individual contributors.
Well, and Ross, this is what a tendency I hear that, aligning to goals and strategy is a big company issue. It's not a smaller mid-sized company issue. And I totally disagree.
Disagree.
I think that there's always this assumption, that a smaller organization that everybody just knows and is automatically aligned. First off, never true. Work happens in silos, no matter where you are in a company or how big or small they are. And then second, just being able to know how much as an individual you're contributing to really driving the business, I think is extremely effective. And then on the flip side, from a leadership perspective, being able to pull this out on a moment's notice, to be able to have that type of fingertip access. Again, huge companies, tiny companies, I bet every single one of them will tell you there's a challenge trying to get that information if they don't have it all consolidated in a single source.
And you hit it, my next point, right on the head. You said it at your fingertips. And that's really about what that goal-driven planning is about. So I'm capturing all of this data around my investments, of capturing start dates and finish dates and financials and resources that are on them. But I'm also aligning those to strategy and to goals. And there's a couple ways that we can do that, right? I can just have a drop down and pick a goal, and here's the company goals. And I select one of those that I think this project is kind of maneuvering towards. But it could also be as complex as asking, 5 or 6 questions and generating an overall score. And having that information to allow you to kind of prioritize your investments is a really great feature. I've been on, probably my last 3 clients that I've been partnering with have brought up where they may not be, or they're going through their annual planning process. And they've listed out, 60 investments that the organization wants to tackle. Well, we've only got so many resources and we've only got so much money, so we can't necessarily do those all. Well, a quick way to kind of narrow down that list, let's look at the projects and which goals they're aligning to. Are these projects from last year still on board with the same goals that we have for this year, right? It's taking the time to kind of quickly understand that, which can obviously, data at your fingertips, help you drive and make those decisions. We should pause this. There's no reason that we should continue this work, even though, maybe we did a half a year's worth of work, if it's not really driving towards our strategy anymore. So making that visible.
Yep.
Adaptability in strategic planning. So as your business kind of evolves, goals may shift, funding may change, disruptors may occur, it's nice to have a PPM solution that can bend and adapt to changing environments, right? So whether I'm losing a round of funding, or maybe I've received additional funding that was not originally planned because we got a new grant or something like that. Let's have the ability, your PPM solution should have the ability to kind of quickly redraw a water line to say, oh, well, I've got, $1 million in additional funding. I can do these 6 more things. Oh, well, let's look at those 6 things and what's our highest priority goal? Let's tackle those projects. So having that adaptability, that kind of road mapping capability to say, okay, well, let's just pivot these, and in 3 clicks, I can show you if we get $1 million more or we lose $1 million, here's the investments that we can kind of add or remove from our mix.
Well, and I think, Ross, on top of that, you're hitting the nail on the head on another topic, and I think you're about to go there. I'm cutting you off on that one, which is that slot in, because we all can lay out all the strategies in the world and lay out all of our work, and we're going to change. We're going to pivot. You used an example of we got hacked, or a market condition changes, or an opportunity arises we weren't planning on, to be able to go in and say, okay, what if we drop this right here? What's the downstream impact of dropping something in? We're going to screw up some other projects. Are we going to need to reshuffle the decks? Do we need to maybe bring in consultants to help augment that space to bring in this new project? If you get it all in one place, these are the types of things you can answer, and you can answer very effectively too.
Yeah, quickly. You can answer these super quickly. And so as we kind of have strategic goals as kind of our North Star, let's talk about our next topic, which is having the correct resources in place to kind of bring these goals to life. And so resource optimization, and this is really getting the most for your team, right? So this first one around resource visibility, and that can come in a few different views for your organization when selecting a PPM tool. So we really want to look at kind of grabbing the resources that we have today and capturing maybe additional metadata around them. So your PPM solution should have the ability to grow as you grow. So let's say, for example, right now you are an organization and you just need to know your overall capacity. I need to know which resources I have, and I can do, 48,000 hours of work a year. And that's my kind of high level capacity. Let's say, okay, that's a great starting point. Down the road, maybe I want to pepper in some allocation information against that. So let's say I've got my capacity. I want to grab Alison as a resource. She's got 2,000 hours a year that she can work on, and she's going to be 50% split between two projects. All right, my organization continues to keep growing, and now maybe I want to add in some roles into this space. So Alison, as a developer, is now 50% split on this project, Project A and Project B, right? So I've added in a layer of primary role or role to Alison. She's a developer. In addition to those kind of primary roles or roles that you're capturing, it doesn't always have to be tied to a main resource. Maybe I want to show future demand that I don't really have a named resource for yet. I know that in 6 months, I'm going to need 6 more developers. I don't have those resources yet. So either we're going to have to do contractors or we're going to have to hire more people. So that's another layer of kind of adapting to the role perspective. Your organization continues to grow, right? Now I've got Alison, a developer, 50% on project A and B, but I need to know, developer is pretty broad in terms of kind of a role. She could know C#, she could know Java, she could know SharePoint development, any of that. So really getting down to more of a skills type level would maybe benefit me a little bit more. So I kind of layered on that approach to kind of show you all the different ways that having a PPM solution that can kind of grow with you as you make the journey through kind of resource optimization is so key and critical. And I think we've seen that with, I don't know, every organization I've worked with. It always starts kind of small and baby steps. And you may jump right into the resource and primary role phase. You may jump all the way back and just say, I need just overall capacity and demand numbers. And I don't really care about resource names. I don't care about roles. I just need to know what my headcount is. So all of that information can kind of grow with you when choosing your PPM solution. Next on this one, we spoke a little bit about at the beginning around waterfall, agile, things like that. And I don't want you to assume that everyone's executing the work the same way or every company is the same. So your PPM solution should also have the flexibility to either have you as an individual contributor, as part of a team, but it really shouldn't make a difference when I'm looking at the overall capacity numbers of my organization or demand numbers. Right, I'm part of a team, and maybe I'm 50% on this team and 50% on this team, and that team is in turn on 6 different projects. That concept is still widely used and known, and so your PPM solution should have the flexibility to operate in either way as you kind of go through this. Lastly, your PPM solution should really work for you. So let's say, and this is kind of going to be a little bit of a segue into one of the topics that Alison is going to present next, but it's really around having your PPM solution. You've gone in, you've added your resources, your roles, you've said how much time is going to be spent in that space or on that project or that investment. Let's go ahead and take that information and tell you the cost of the labor for these projects. Let me go ahead and calculate all of that out for you. You've already done the hard part. You've told me which names, roles, resources are going to be on these projects. Let me go in and actually calculate those out with some rate cards. And so that functionality is also key. So it's not duplicating the work, right? We're kind of building upon information that you've already entered to allow us to help you build out your project further. All right, so that's kind of resource optimization in a nutshell. And Alison, I don't know if you have any examples or any other commentary, but we'll jump over into financial management.
Let's talk about financials. Always an interesting conversation. And one of those areas where I will say, for the most part, we're seeing organizations really treat this like an evolution versus a revolution. So let's talk what we're talking about with financial oversight. Sometimes you'll hear it referred to as stewardship or financial management, but it's more than just about the numbers. It's really aligning your strategy, which Ross talked all about, to your financials, and then being able to track that day-to-day performance. So what does that really mean? It's about budget management and tracking and controlling your project budgets. It's about forecasting and helping you anticipate financial needs and risks and ROI. So let's talk a little bit deeper into these different topics. So budget management. When you talk about budget management, we know that being able to help you budget and plan effectively is important. And a lot of times in that evolution, this is sort of the easier step, because what you can do is go in and say, look, Ross, I'm going to give you $25,000 for this project. That's your budget. That's your constraint. You got to go make it work within that constraint. A lot of times that feels like the easier piece of it. Ross, though, having to be able to track against that $25,000 constraint, if he doesn't have all of his stuff in one place, can make it really, really complicated. And so if you think about that evolution, being able to track and control those budgets, control how you're aligning to that budget and show, are you over, under, are you trending like you might end up going over? Does it look really bad now? And then the last week, Ross is going to get it all back in shape. We know that that is so important. And it's part of that budget management piece that Clarity can really help you do. So it's really helping you align to your constraints and align to your limits. But forecasting is a little bit different, because we just talked about Ross has 25,000 and he's managing his project, and then things happen and scope changes. Not that that ever happens in any organization except all of them. And so that project is starting to balloon, and it's not going to be in the $25,000 range if we start adding on all these other things that we want, and this additional feature or this additional purchase that needs to be done. And that's that forecasting piece of it. And being able to use a tool to anticipate those needs, and even also get good line of sight into risks, I think is super important. Because again, if you're tracking it all in one place and you're saying, look, these things are happening, these market conditions are changing, we're able to then get a much more accurate forecast. It doesn't mean everybody's going to green light it and say, okay, here, Ross, here's another $50,000, go for it and crush this project. But it does mean that people have to, by making it visible, they have to now understand the pros and cons of what that expansion looks like. So, giving Ross another $50,000 might sound great, but we're going to take that from somewhere else. And we don't have any of that light of sight if it's all happening in spreadsheets and it's all happening independently. And so really leveraging a tool to anticipate those needs, we know is important. What's nice is, again, if we're talking evolution and not revolution, this is kind of that step 2 of the journey. First is, here's your budget, here's your constraint. Second is, here's how we're going to start to forecast and get line of sight if we start to go beyond it. And then third is that third item on here, those return on investment. Now, some folks do all kinds of different calculations and earn value and all kinds of, it's always not just ROI, but being able to, in your tool, go in and try to accurately understand and have folks articulate project value as well as post-project return. You said this was gonna, make us $1 million. Did it make us 2? Or are we falling short? These are some of the things that you want to get all in one place and make sure your tool can do this. Now, I will say this, and Ross, I'm going to want you to jump in with me on this one. Most clients don't jump into this this deep of the water right away, but they evolve to this as a way to, aspirationally know that they can get there. What we know fails is if you use tools that don't have that infrastructure built in, that will allow you to get to this level. So Ross, I don't know if you want to chime in here a little bit.
Well, and I think you kind of took the words right out of my mouth. So just like resource management, where you kind of heard the evolution of kind of capturing the details as Alison kind of moved from just, a person to a developer to a Java developer, the same can be true for financials, right? I may start and just say, okay, your budget is 25K, and that's good, impactful information. But as my kind of financial journey continues, you want a PPM solution that can also grow with you. So maybe I started with 25K as my budget, but now I need to break that down, and I need to say that 10K of that is labor, another 10K of that is a capital hardware purchase, and the last 5K is a software purchase, right? So having a solution that kind of grows with you as your organization either grows or the finance department demands more of your team in that space is really critically important.
Exactly. So we really feel like making sure your tool allows you room to grow is essential. Which brings us to my next topic, and then I'll pass it back to you, Mr. Ross, which is risks. Oh boy, risks is always such an interesting conversation. And the reason why I kind of chuckle is because everybody looks at risk in a little bit of a different lens. What you want to do is make sure that no matter which lens you're looking at risk in, you have a tool that aligns to that vision. And so when I say risk, so first off, there's that very tactical risk. Hey, something could happen. And making sure people are using a tool to alert and inform something could happen. Things can impact us from being successful. Stuff is running late, supply chain got disrupted. Whatever those things are that we want to identify and make sure everybody's on board, all parties are on board, sponsors, leadership, and team members, we want to make sure that we have that risk identification done. The next item on here we talk about is impact analysis. So understanding and assessing the consequences on those goals. All right, stuff might come in late. What does that mean? Does it mean if stuff comes in late, we can make up for it in the long run and we'll still hit our project on time? Or does this mean it could delay our completion dates, or it could impact things like our resources? You know, these are all of those kind of triaging experience that you need to take into account when you're looking across risks. And then same thing goes with that mitigation plan, because if this risk is so big, it's going to really impact us. Is everybody on board with that? Our sponsors and customers and downstream people that are going to be impacted by the work getting adjusted, are they notified? Are they on board with it? You know, I have a client that said, I can handle just about anything except being blindsided. And I think what he really meant there, that subtext, is if I know it's coming, I can plan for it, I can articulate, and I can share. If I don't know it's coming, I don't know what to do. And so one of the things a good PPM tool should do is allow you to identify, plan, impact, and mitigate any of those risks. But it can also do a little bit more of an uplift. And I'm going to go steal again back to Ross's early slide to strategy and talk about how you can use the tool for also risk analysis. So one of the neat things that your tool should do is also give you the capability to be able to go in and say, well, this project aligned really well to our strategies and to our goals and what we're trying to do. It also can take on some high risks. So before we ever even invest, before we ever start throwing people at it, that we do have some way of looking at the work itself and understanding how it fits into our organization and what that risk could look like. You know, this is oftentimes a step folks skip, but we want to make sure that you know that your tool should really support this. Then you look at your landscape. You know, is this going to align to our architecture? Are we trying to do something that's going to be in conflict with our organizational mission? Let's go in and really make sure we're looking at that as part of your business case and overall planning piece. Those are really important. Sorry,
I think that's, no, I think that is perfect. Everything you said was perfect. And I like that you layered in, you know, while we're looking at project risk, you've also got to look at it from a lens of, you know, EA risk, right? Or security risk, just like Alison just mentioned, right? And so having a PPM solution that can not only track kind of, okay, should we be doing this? Is it the right architecture? Is the, you know, firmware updated? Is this updated? That kind of stuff. Are we, you know, allowing the firewall? Do we need ports open? That kind of stuff from an enterprise architecture kind of risk standpoint. You also want to capture those inherently project risks that may impact the project itself and kind of surface or bubble those up. And so having a way to kind of categorize those so the right risks route to the correct people for actioning is kind of invaluable in the grand scheme of things.
Absolutely. All right. This next one is yours.
That is mine. So we talked about risks and we talked about kind of making those visible. Well, okay, great. I've made the risk visible. You know, maybe someone can have a decision on that, but likely 9 times out of 10, you're going to need a little bit of collaboration in that. And so that's why collaboration your team collaboration, stakeholder collaboration, all of that is kind of imperative within a PPM solution. So we really want kind of a seamless spot, a centralized communications hub where we're kind of gathering all that information and keeping it nice and tidy. And so I've got all my investment information, I've got my resource information. So why not have the chats that are happening around this project in kind of one spot, or at least integrated into one spot for tracking. And so your PPM solution should have a conversations or a chat functionality in it so that you can work directly in that investment and kind of cross collab with your teams. Not only that, it should also offer the flexibility for you to capture certain pieces of information. If you have a document repository in SharePoint or in Box, if you have the standard at your company is Microsoft Teams or Slack, right? The PPM solution should be able to integrate with those and actually pull that information in, or at least the highlights. We've seen all kinds of cool functionality around embedding certain things, workflows with documents, so they route to the correct people for approval. But all of that information kind of in one. So when I open up my project A, I see all the information related to that project. It's not like I have to bounce over to 6 different SharePoints or Box drives or Teams or anything like that. It's all kind of in a single standardized space for me to kind of take action on. And so that's what you should really look for in a PPM solution, right? Not only do I want to track conversations that are happening at the project level, but maybe individual tasks or risks or issues or resources, right? I can have all of those conversations at different levels, all kind of in a centralized hub within my project. So I can have that information and kind of set in stone as I go through the life cycle of my project. So collaboration truly kind of foundational to a PPM solution. So
it's game changing, right? It's game changing. And by the way, collaboration, I feel like sometimes people are like, oh, it's Teams or oh, it's Slack. And it's like, no, collaboration is 3 people working together on a document or looking at a project plan and tasks together and really being on the same page. And so I love how you put this slide and how you describe it, Ross. It's so much more. And if it's getting our teams talking together, it's a game changer.
Yep, 100%. So we've talked about kind of the importance of collaboration, but let's move on to how your PPM solution should convert any kind of data that you captured, whether it's strategy that we talked about earlier, resources or your people, your financials, or even your collaboration piece here, the risks, all of that into kind of one single spot for reporting and analytics, right? So this one is kind of paramount, right? All that hard work that you've done in all those other spaces really comes down to this slide right here. And it's the data that you put in is hopefully good or better than the data that you get out so that you can actually take actionable meaning towards these projects and say, okay, well, we should pause this one, we should cancel this one, we should invest more in this one. So all of that is kind of critical for a PPM solution when you're talking around reporting and analytics. And so real-time dashboards. So way back when, we used to have those kind of static reports, emailed reports to you, that kind of thing, that were kind of a snapshot in time, that were great, and they do serve a purpose. And even today, they still serve a purpose, right? Maybe we want historical categorization of these reports and things like that. That's all well and good, and we can still do that. But kind of the era of real-time dashboarding, where I have a link that is always up to date with the latest information out of your PPM solution, is so critical. And it's critical for a few different reasons. One is adoption, right? If I have the CEO clicking on this link and reviewing and looking at projects or VPs or directors, whatever the case may be, I'm going to ensure that I'm in a PPM solution, I'm updating my data because I want it to look good. If there's a problem or a risk or an issue that I want kind of visualized on one of these reports, I'm going to be sure it's in PPM because that's what people are using to look at the data. So it's kind of critical that it's there and kind of available whenever you need it. It also improves trust and data integrity, right? I know that this is going to be showing on this report that everyone clicks on. So I'm going to ensure that my data is up to date. So it can also reduce the amount of actual report generation that you have to do. So if I'm tired of building PowerPoints, I'm just going to send this link and say, all your project updates will be here. You can click this link. It's always in real time. As long as I've updated it in the PPM solution, it will be updated in this link. And I think that that's those three options, in addition to obviously being able to look at the data and kind of decision it, some of those underlying things that you don't really necessarily think of as benefits to kind of having a true real-time dashboard are really kind of critical in this space. The next one is around kind of customizable reports. And I'll give you a good example. I had a customer, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, and they wanted to standardize reporting. And on paper, that seems really great and like a really good idea for any organization. You have a standard report that kind of goes out, and that's what everyone kind of reads from. The practicalness of that is not true. It's very difficult to get the organization to standardize on a single report. So having a PPM solution that allows you the flexibility to say, oh, this stakeholder doesn't really care about financials, or this stakeholder, I don't, maybe that's a vendor that I have to report to, so I don't want to include financials on that. Or this one only cares about the status update from our status reports. They don't need resource information. So having a PPM solution where you're able to kind of take the information that you have, whether it's on a dashboard or a report, but kind of drag and drop, right? It's got to be simple for the end users. So you don't always have to tax an admin or a developer to kind of build you a custom report. Allow the end users to kind of go in and do that information or do those updates on the fly. And the last one is obviously around data-driven decision-making, right? So having all this data that you've input, you want to make sure that it's used effectively. And so having the dashboards represented in a certain way, whether it's grouping them by portfolio, by slice of the organization, by product, whatever it may be, is kind of the crux of reporting, right? You want to build reports that are impactful to your users. So maybe it's reports on aligning to goals and strategies. Maybe it's resource reporting. Maybe it's project status reporting, risk reporting, financial reporting, all of those, and kind of having that information at their fingertips so these resources, these leaders can make decisions on the fly, informed decisions, I should say, is kind of the biggest piece of this entire slide. Alison, anything I missed on this one?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head with this one. I mean, dashboards, reports, and dashboards. I mean, this is what fuels organizations. And so if it's not easy, then it's not trusted. And I find that if folks feel like it takes you 3 weeks to go build the report, then they no longer trust that it's valid. And so I think what you're talking about in here in terms of real-time, customizable, and decision-making, I think are really key and important.
Yeah. So we've kind of talked about, we've kind of gone through kind of we peeled back the onion a little bit, right? We didn't get into the basics of your PPM solution should have task management and it should have, a repository of projects if you want, because that's all straightforward. We kind of covered the topics that are a little bit more behind the scenes that you should really consider kind of for the future of your organizations and kind of where you want to go. And so we want to talk a little bit about choosing and implementing the right PPM tool. And so where we want to start is with the importance of identifying some key requirements. And so you should clearly understand your organization's specific needs. So go through, identify the must-have features that are going to address your specific pain points, but also keep in the back of your head where you want to go. So resource management may be a pain point right now, but in the future, risk management may also be an additional pain point that you have. So keeping that, while you may have your basic list that you kind of start with of your pain points and what you'd like the PPM solution to kind of achieve, keep in the back of your head some of the other things that we've talked about today and where your organization might be headed. we always want to discuss the significance of vendor support, right? So I could have the best application, but if it is down, if it's impossible to configure, if the learning curve is too high, if any of those things, if I have an issue with a report that is broken and I can't get into contact with support, then it's all for naught, right? If the system is not stable, it won't be used. If it's not used, none of this works. And so having a partner and a vendor that you can trust, that you can rely on, that has kind of a proven excellence in this space, having that training documentation, having, regular get-togethers where you're seeing webinars come out around this and that information, I think is pretty critical when you're looking at a PPM solution, and maybe not one that resonates kind of easily as some of the others, like, oh, does it have resource management? Does it have this? Really looking at the vendor behind the scenes and ensuring that they're the right fit for your organization and the application. Emphasizing planning for scalability. So you want to choose a PPM tool that can scale with your organization. I think I've hammered that in. So if it hasn't resonated yet, hopefully it will now. You may not need resource management today, but you will move along and you will eventually be there. Same for financial management. Any of these spaces, kind of land and expand is the approach with most organizations when it comes to PPM solutions. Everyone's kind of different on their maturity. So kind of planning for the future, whether it's down the road, I want to get to portfolio management, or down the road, I want to go to 5-year strategic planning, anything like that. While they may not be critical today, make sure that you're looking for those things in a PPM solution as you kind of navigate the space. So once you've selected kind of the right tool, you want to focus on a structured implementation process, right? And you want to have a partner in that space, a vendor in that space that's kind of assisting and guiding you through that. Whether it's with documentation or hands-on keyboard kind of functionality. All of that is kind of critical to kind of rolling out any of that in those spaces. And so, Alison, unless I missed anything, I want to bounce it over to you to why we feel like Moventus is a good fit for this.
Sure. Yeah, let's cover that really quick. So talking a little bit about Moventus, Ross and I obviously come from working with the solution, but we do feel like it's going to tick these boxes that we've been covering, and it's going to tick it really nicely. So why would you choose it for your needs? Well, first off, let's talk about, and it's an integrated solution. And so it's an all-in-one platform for managing projects, resources, and financials. So why is that important? Well, that is going to give, of course, all of the things that we've been talking about: insights into risk, great reporting and dashboards and analytics, alignment to goals, real-time interfaces, and understanding of what's happening with your people. But the next point, I think, is such an important one, and it's that user-friendly interface. What's really neat about Moventus is it was built and designed by folks who listen to and talk to customers, that talk about ethnographic research studies, that go and talk to end users to find out what they need and what they hate, what they love and what they don't want in a tool. And it's been really purpose-built. It's not a tool that was built to do something else like track tickets or track bugs. It is truly a tool meant for designing and building good strategic project and portfolio management. So that's going to give you a very intuitive design that's going to simplify complex processes and make it very, very easy for your end users to grab it and get successful with it. And finally, we think here at within Moventus that our support is just outstanding. We have folks that have been working with solutions and have been in the PPM space for more than 20 years. That would be your front line of support, that would be able to help guide you down the direction to make sure you're building what's going to be valuable, that are going to help you should things go wrong, and that are going to really lay out a vision for you and with you that will be something that's aspirational and ensure that you're going to align to drive value. So we feel like those are all very important and what really drives Moventus to be a good choice for your PPM needs. So Ross, I don't know if you want to close us out here.
Yeah, let's close it out. We've kind of hit the hour mark here. So Alison started with a little bit of this, the imperative of PPM in modern business. And I think we're just kind of wanting to wrap up echoing a few of these points, right? It should really be an integrated solution. We think that Moventus is that solution, right? It's an all-in-one platform for managing our projects, our resources, our finances, our risks, our issues. It's slicing the portfolio. It's showing, aligning to strategy. It's collaboration within the tool. It is the all-in-one kind of integrated solution that is, to Alison's point, built for a specific purpose, and that's what we're using it for. It is a user-friendly interface. When you reach out to Alison and you get a demo of Moventus, what you'll see is it looks like applications that you're familiar with, right? So if you've got Kanban applications where you're picking up cards and moving them along, it has that. If you're I'm sure everyone is familiar with Excel. It's got grid views that look exactly like Excel. So it's not a brand new application. It's got some familiar pieces to it for the end user. So I think that you'll find with Moventus, a lot of the clicking and the moving and the navigation is very intuitive for most of our users. And lastly, just echoing what Alison said around exceptional support, right? Really keying in on the vendor and allowing them to be a partner, seeing them as a partner and allowing them to kind of usher you through kind of the natural progression. At Rego and working with Moventus, we've got guides on guides, white papers on white papers, webinars through the roof on all the different ways that we've assisted customers in this journey. And so it shouldn't necessarily be you on an island working on Moventus. We really want to foster kind of that partnership with each of the organizations that we work with. So you get the value out of the solution and that you kind of keep coming back and saying, okay, now what? What next? We're ready for more. And I think that's really kind of the end goal for all of this. And so with that said,
we just want to
Poston over here.
So much. Yeah. We want to thank you all so much for attending and joining, and hopefully we threw some light bulbs up for folks to give you some ideas. And we just want us to know that we are here to help. So let us show you how the tool works. Let us show you how we as an organization can help your organization. Shoot me an email, call me, let me know how we can help out. But I think you're going to be delighted with how great this solution is to solve your issues.